Hearthstone's new mini expansion, Wailing Caverns, is right around the corner, and with it comes 35 brand new exciting cards. So in this video, I'm going to be going over 5 brand new theorycraft decks that you can use for day 1 of the new mini expansion. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Funki Monki, your go-to off-meta deck builder, and I'm here to share with you my 5 favorite, most exciting new decks for Wailing Caverns. Now, as a little preface, I did go ahead and design these decks to include as many of the new cards as possible while still keeping them very viable. So without further ado, let's hop into the first deck. If any of you guys know me on this channel, you know that I love Shaman. It's my favorite class, and we actually got a couple of brand new cards here to make this potentially very powerful. So we're using the new Wailing Vapor, which is a 1-mana 1/3. Every time you play an elemental, you get +1 attack on this guy. That was Elemental Shaman's kind of biggest weakness, was those 1-drops. We were oftentimes putting in weird things like Novice Zapper, but now we have 2 solid elementals that we can play on turn 1. We have the Kindling Elemental and we have the Wailing Vapor to get the ball rolling. And once Elemental Shaman gets the ball rolling, oh boy, does it just steamroll the opponent. And then we finally got some card draw with the Primal Dungeoneer. So we have very specific nature spells in here. We only have 1 Lightning Bloom, 2 Dunk Tanks, and 2 Serpentine Portals. So we have Mana Cheating and we have Bird. Basically all the things that Elemental Shaman cares about. So basically with this deck, you just want to follow a good curve, always stay ahead on the board, and we have some insane burst damage that we can do with this deck. Not only do we have all of our burn spells, we can go like a fantastic Firebird into a Mist Runner and then follow that up with more damage with the Fire Elemental. Yeah, super stoked about this deck, and maybe Shaman is finally playable. The second Theorycraft deck that I have for you on day 1 is going to be this Token Deviant Dreadfang Druid. Now you'll notice that this looks a little bit different than like our typical Gibberling Token Druid. So I slowed down this deck a little bit. I included some ramp with the Wild Growth and the Overgrowth, and our win condition now, instead of the Gibberlings, is going to be the Deviant Dreadfang. So Deviant Dreadfang being the only beast in our deck, we can tutor it with Living Seed and further discount it. And I also do have an Imprisoned Satyr in here, so we can discount it even further for some massive swing turns. That is one of the weaknesses of Token Druid nowadays, is once you get pushed off the board, like against like Rush Warrior or Paladin, they can just permanently push you off the board for the rest of the game, and you just don't have anything to buff. But with Deviant Dreadfang, this is the perfect card to regain the board, so that way you can start buffing up your dudes and push for lethal with that Arbor up. Like, just imagine this curve. On turn 2, you Living Seeds, you draw a 7-mana Deviant Dreadfang. Turn 3, you play the Imprisoned Satyr. Turn 4, you draw a bunch of cards with Fungal Fortunes. Turn 5, the Imprisoned Satyr wakes up, and all of a sudden you have a 2-mana Deviant Dreadfang and a handful of spells you can cast with it. If that doesn't win games, I don't know what does. Now, moving along to the third Theorycraft deck, we have this Mutanus Cthulhu Rogue deck. So with Rogue, we can draw super quick through our deck and get to those Cthulhu pieces and get them all assembled. But one of the weaknesses to any Cthulhu deck is Alucia and Ticketus. Well, one way to solve that is through Mutanus and then Shadow Stepping it over and over again, so we can go ahead and make sure we get rid of that Ticketus. Or we have the new Savory Deviant Delight. Oftentimes, we're just going to have some kind of cheap minion in our hand, like a Blackjack Stunner against a control deck. And if we can transform that and our opponents like Alucia or Ticketus, we'll gladly take that trade. Against non-control decks, like against other aggressive decks, we still can play that tempo game plan. And against other aggressive decks, we can go ahead and Shadow Step the Kazakus with a Jandis. Against other control decks, we can Shadow Step the Mutanus. If you really want to mess with your opponents, you can go Mutanus, Shadow Step, Shadow Step, Henwu, and then another Mutanus. You just gotta hope that if your opponent is also playing Mutanus, that they don't eat yours before you eat theirs. The fourth Theorycraft deck that I got for you guys is going to be a Silas OTK Warrior using the new Kresh card. So because Kresh is a frenzy, we can run him in like a Sourfang package. I thought about running him in a more aggressive like N'Zoth deck, but he's just very slow of a card, and like, what do you do with that weapon? So I figured, let's go ahead and put him in a slower deck, and we can really utilize the armor gain from him. So not only do we get the 8 armor originally from the 1 frenzy, but if we get him back with the Saurfang, that's 16 armor. Combine that with other armor gain cards like Kargath, Rancor, Shield Maiden, and we can easily get enough armor for an OTK, so we can go ahead and swap with the Soulbound Ash Tongue with our Silas and then Shield Slam that. One cool thing about Kresh is he does give you a weapon upon the death rattle, and you can use that weapon to chip your opponent down, so you don't really need as much armor as you think to get that OTK. And alongside Kresh for the package, we are running the 2 Stonewall Anchorman, and we can even tutor them with the Stage Dives. We have a lot of draw to assemble our combo pieces like the Soulbound Ash Tongue, the Silas, and the Shield Slams. When theory crafting this, it actually looks like it came together pretty well, and I'm kind of afraid of this deck. Assuming your opponent doesn't also have like a Mutanus or something else to disrupt your combo. All right, so the fifth and final but not least theorycraft deck for you is going to be a Big Demon Hunter. So this deck utilizes the new Big Demon Taint Heart Tormentor, which is an 8-mana 8/8, and while it's on the field, all your opponent's spells cost 2 more. This can be absolutely crucial to delay your opponent's like Soulmere by 2 turns. It's a lot harder for a Warlock to cast like a Twisting Nether to clear your board. Even like a simple Hysteria is 6 mana, which is still quite expensive, especially if you can get the Taint Heart Tormentor down early and cheat him out with like a Vol'jin, a Fel Summoner, or a Raging Fel Screamer. Your opponent just doesn't have the mana to deal with that, especially when other spells cost 2 more. And then another new card that we're using in here is the new Sigil of Summoning. For 2 mana, you get 4/4 worth of stats and taunt. This is huge. They also do provide 2 minions, so you can go ahead and maybe bounce one of them to your hand with Vol'jin and trade it for a Big Demon. And overall, it's just a really good stall tool, so you can go ahead and make it to the mid game, so you can start playing your big demons. Now, this deck is a pretty expensive deck, so we can't really afford to run a Skull of Gul'dan and consistently get it outcasted. So we have to draw somewhere else. So we are running like Illidari Studies, so we can maybe get some draw that way. We are running a Tusk Piercer, which draws us either the Death's Head Cultist or the Fel Summoner. And then we are running Chaos Strike. And since we have so much weapon damage, we are also running the Eldrachi Warblades for a lot of healing. Yeah, I'm really excited about this deck. And I mean, come on, hey, who doesn't love playing just Big Demon after Big Demon? So that's all the theorycraft decks that I have for you guys. I hope you guys are just as excited about this new mini expansion as I am. And I hope this video is helpful to give you guys some ideas of what to play on day 1. If you enjoyed these decks or if this video is helpful, then leave a like down below. That really does help me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm, so I'd really appreciate it. And these theorycraft decks, just like every other deck that you see on this channel, are created by myself. So if you love deck building, if you love off-meta decks you can't see anywhere else on YouTube, then subscribe. It's free and you can always change your mind later. But I hope you guys enjoy the new mini expansion, Wailing Caverns, and I'll see you in the caverns.